Hi, my name is Eric Forman, and I've had the honor of knowing. Nah. Hi, my name is Eric Forman, and I've had the pleasure of knowing. Nah. Hi, my name is Eric Forman, and I've known Rolland for about 16 and a half years. I'm sorry I couldn't be there live with you, but at the moment I'm on a plane returning from Vegas, and, well, we all have our priorities, don't we? But before I talk about Rolland, it's traditional at a roast like this to say a few things about some of the other people on the dais before getting to the guest of honor. So, what can I say about Rich? You know, he wrote a book on improv. I don't know how well it sold, but I'm guessing none of the doors in his home close unwantedly and none of the papers on his desk ever get blown away. And then there's Robin, but really, what could I possibly say about Robin that could embarrass her any more than to simply point out that she lives with Rolland? With so many of Rolland's improv friends in attendance, I'll leave the jokes about his improv to them, except to mention that constantly saying yes and never helps in anyone's dating life. And when things start getting intimate, asking for a place and occupation just ruins the mood. Back when I first met him, Rolland used to listen to an obnoxious radio host named Tom Likas, and Rolland began to buy into the Likas philosophy of not spending much money on dating women. One of the rules was not spending more than $40 on a single date. I'd like to think I helped deprogram him, but Robin, be prepared. If Rolland ever relapses, he's probably going to send you a bill. One of the other Likas rules that if you hadn't had sex by the third date, dump the woman. Nobody needs or wants confirmation on that one. Thank you. I often found it a little odd when Rolland would ask me for dating advice. That's because I've only dated 4 women in my life. I had long-term relationships with 3 of them and married 2 of them. With my wife Eden, I made an oblique reference to our wedding on our first date. I told her I loved her on our 4th date, and I proposed after just 2 months. We've now been married for 26 years. What I'm saying is, asking me for dating advice is like asking Rolland for dating advice. Until Robin came along, the typical fruit fly lived longer than Rolland's average relationship. His relationships would expire before his cell phone battery died. Technically, his relationships lasted longer than Zack Snyder's Justice League, but Justice League felt far longer. And that's why there'll never be a roast of Zack Snyder. It would just be too easy. It took a hell of a long time, but Rolland finally found his pearl. They say you have to shuck a lot of oysters to find a pearl, so Robin, that would explain those trash bags full of shells in Rolland's closet. Also, most of those shells are clams, which explains a lot. But Robin is far more than a pearl. Hell, given Rolland's dating history, she's beyond unicorn status. Statistically, she's like a midget, albino, left-handed, two-headed unicorn. Around age 45, Rolland finally decided to learn how to cook after realizing he'd spent so much on eating out for practically every meal that he could have bought a house. Granted, it took him living in his same apartment for almost 20 years before realizing his stove had a built-in griddle. That's not a joke. He's been with Robin for 3 years now, so in about 17 more years I expect he'll discover some part of Robin that he wasn't previously aware of. At this point, I'm secretly hoping that Rolland never actually marries Robin. That's because many of the jokes I'm delivering today I'd already prepared to say at their hypothetical wedding. So if they do get married, I'll have to come up with all new material. For someone who always says he never wanted kids, he was surprisingly good with mine, Sydney and Edison. Granted, my kids were, and still are, rather atypical. Rolland was the slightly creepy, non-related uncle that every family has, though he was insistent that they never call him uncle. I think his fear is that uncle is just one step removed from father. It was amusing at first to see my kids try to relate to Rolland at his level, but it got a lot easier for them once Rolland started to grow up. One day around 12 years ago, I'd mentioned to Rolland how tired I was of having to take my kids to see so many bad children's movies, so he actually offered to take them to see a movie, which might have been Alvin and the Chipmunks 2, The Squeakquel, or some other piece of crap. Of course, it was so painfully obvious he only took them so he wouldn't have to worry about people glaring at the man in his late 30s going to see a kid's movie alone. My kids were just his camouflage. When our kids were old enough for us to be able to leave them home alone without a babysitter, like any good parents, we left a list of emergency phone numbers on the fridge. Rolland was ninth on the list, right below 1877 Cars for Kids and 818 any 7 random numbers. My kids asked me to say a few words on their behalf. They say that Rolland has always been a big inspiration to them. There was one quote of Rolland's that has always stuck with them that they'll never forget, and that was when he said, "The Dark Knight Rises is the best movie in the Nolan Batman trilogy and possibly in all of cinema." So, my time is almost up, but I'll mention that it's traditional to end the roast by saying something nice and sincere about the roastee. Anyone who knows me well also knows that I can truly turn the sincerity on like a switch and come up with something perfect and touching to say on the spot. But you know what? That's exactly what Rolland would expect from me here, so it's not going to happen. If Rolland wants to hear me say nice things about him in public, he's actually going to have to marry Robin, and I'll say some nice things at the wedding. So, thanks for the time, and who's up next?